Elena, a prominent wealthy philanthropist, was focused on her shopping inside a high-end luxury boutique. The moment she stepped out onto the bustling plaza, a hidden sniper locked onto her. The assassin pulled the trigger, aiming directly for her head. However, a store employee stepped forward at the exact wrong moment, taking the bullet meant for Elena. While her personal security team scrambled, a mysterious man wearing glasses rushed to her side. Before the sniper could realign for a clean second shot, the plaza's automated fountain erupted, creating a thick wall of water that completely obscured the shooter's line of sight. Realizing his plan had failed, the assassin switched to a machine gun, firing at a nearby pool of spilled gasoline to trigger a deadly explosion. The mysterious man anticipated the move. Using the shifting water curtain as cover, he dragged Elena to her luxury vehicle. Thanks to the car's heavy armored plating, they managed to withstand the incoming gunfire and safely escaped the chaotic city center, heading toward the quiet countryside. Safe havens and growing suspicions. Safely away from danger, Elena demanded to know the identity of her savior. The man stammered, claiming he was just an ordinary bystander who happened to witness the attack. Elena didn't buy the story for a second, but given her vulnerable position, she feigned belief. Shortly after, the man finished inspecting the vehicle and discovered a hidden GPS tracking device. Using this as an excuse, he informed her that returning to the city was too dangerous. Still skeptical, Elena asked to borrow his phone to call the police, wanting to test his reaction. He quickly deflected, warning her that high-ranking insiders within the police force were likely compromised. Instead, he took her to his own home, a remarkably modest, ordinary house with basic furnishings. To ease her anxiety, he willingly handed over his mobile phone, granting her total freedom to contact her family before heading off to take a shower. This gesture convinced Elena that he had no intention of holding her hostage. When he emerged, his athletic physique and an untreated injury caught Elena's attention. Driven by an unusual impulse, she stepped forward to help bandage his wound. It had been years since she had been this physically close to any man other than her husband. Despite the underlying tension, the man remained perfectly gentlemanly, offering her a damp cloth to wipe the dust from her face. When he announced his plan to escort her safely to the embassy, Elena felt a sudden, unexpected wave of disappointment. Loudspeaker enjoying the drama? Let's take a quick break. If you want to know whether this mysterious savior can be trusted, or if the corrupt family empire will finally crumble, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below with your theories. Who do you think hired the sniper? Turn on notifications so you never miss the next thrilling episode. High society masks and family secrets. At the embassy, Elena's husband, Julian, the powerful vice president of a massive corporate conglomerate, arrived to retrieve her. Despite his questioning, Elena treated him with cold indifference. Meanwhile, Marcus, the head of the family's security detail, arrived too late to interview the mysterious savior, who had already quietly slipped away. However, when Marcus reviewed the incident report, he was stunned by the signature. It turned out the man was Leo, a legendary former operative from his old security unit, whom he had been desperately trying to recruit. The fact that Leo just happened to be at the scene of an assassination attempt seemed far too calculated to be a mere coincidence. Defying her husband's strict objections, Elena held a massive press conference. She boldly declared to the media that hostile forces were targeting her because of her global charitable initiatives, but vowed to continue her work. This bold public move captivated the nation, but it absolutely infuriated Julian and his mother, Victoria, the ruthless chairwoman of the conglomerate, who smashed her television in a fit of rage. The following day, Elena and Julian attended a high-profile gala. To the public, they were South Korea's ultimate power couple. Julian was the flawless corporate heir, and Elena was a former championship golfer turned beloved philanthropist who had even secured a 500 billion won donation from an international tribal chief. But behind closed doors, the marriage was a sham. Halfway through the event, Julian exchanged a subtle glance with Chloe, his young sister-in-law, and the two slipped away. Sensing trouble, Elena went searching for him. When she opened the door to a private room, she caught Julian and Chloe in an intimate embrace. Instead of throwing a tantrum, Elena coldly remarked that they should have been smarter about not getting caught. Chloe arrogantly asked if Elena had known about their affair for a long time. Elena didn't give her the satisfaction of an emotional response. Instead, she scolded them for endangering the family reputation while reporters swarmed outside. Minutes later, as the gala transitioned to the dance floor, Elena placed her hand in her husband's dirty palm. Under the admiring eyes of high society, they danced flawlessly, putting on a perfect show of marital bliss, hidden agendas, and late-night confrontations. After the party, Elena confronted Victoria directly. She found Chloe leaving the chairwoman's private quarters, exposing the true plot. Victoria had intentionally engineered the affair between Chloe and Julian. Her goal was to force Elena into demanding a divorce, triggering a prenuptial agreement that would strip Elena of her assets. Before his passing, the former chairman had entrusted the conglomerate's most valuable subsidiary directly to Elena. Now, Victoria couldn't touch a single asset without Elena's explicit signature, despite her icy composure. During the confrontation, a devastated Elena later sought refuge in alcohol. In a state of vulnerable intoxication, she ordered her security team to leave her alone. Leo, who had just been officially hired and assigned as her personal bodyguard, stepped in to watch over her. Bitter and drunk, Elena tried to push him away, but as they entered the elevator, she kept the doors open and motioned for him to follow. The provocation inside her room. Elena intentionally dropped her things. As Leo leaned in to assist her, she recklessly asked him if he wanted to sleep with her. The interruption frustrated by Leo's professional detachment. She stumbled into her room, accidentally dropping her keycard in the hallway. At that moment, a drunk and irritated Julian marched down the hall to confront his wife. The close call inside the darkened room. Leo held Elena against the wall to keep her steady. As tension peaked between them, Julian pounded loudly on the door. Leo moved to open it, but Elena pulled him back, demanding silence. The rescue outside. Julian noticed the dropped keycard. Before he could pick it up, Marcus appeared, retrieved the card, and skillfully steered the intoxicated husband away from the room, subtly sliding the keycard back under the door frame. The ultimate power play. The next morning, the family returned to their massive mountain estate, a compound so vast it took 10 minutes just to drive from the front gates to the main villa. Marcus assigned Leo to the basement quarters closest to the central staircase, positioning him as Elena's primary shadow. While unpacking, Leo dropped a hidden photo frame, revealing an encrypted digital memory card. He flashed back to the final moments of a dying friend, whose cryptic last words were the photo. Leo plugged the card into his laptop and discovered restricted surveillance footage of the estate from the night the former chairman died under highly suspicious circumstances. This footage was the exact reason his friend had been murdered. Meanwhile, Chloe attempted to break Elena's spirit once and for all by revealing the dark truth behind her marriage. Elena had always believed that she and Julian fell in love at first sight during a charity mission in Africa. Chloe mockingly revealed that Julian's previous public girlfriend had died of a sudden drug overdose. To salvage the conglomerate's tanking public image, Julian had been forced to travel to Africa to court Elena, the famed angel of charity, as a calculated PR stunt. To Chloe's absolute horror, Elena didn't shed a single tear. When Chloe asked if she would finally file for divorce, Elena smiled coldly, refusing to give up her position or her late father-in-law's subsidiary. Realizing Elena could not be broken, a desperate Chloe ran to Victoria to confess that their psychological warfare had failed. Victoria, realizing Chloe was no longer a useful pawn, instantly cast her aside. After confirming through legal counsel that Chloe's child was indeed a biological match to the family line, Victoria ordered her lawyers to organize an official family photo shoot. The chairwoman was ready to bypass both of them and finalize her own ruthless counterstrategy. The next day, the venue for the high-stakes family photo shoot was meticulously arranged. Sitting in the dressing room, Elena felt a profound wave of isolation wash over her as the makeup artists worked. Surrounded by corporate handlers and fake smiles, she desperately wished for a single genuine person to confide in. When she arrived at the set, her heart sank. Sitting in a small chair was the young boy. Elena instantly realized Victoria's true play. The ruthless matriarch intended to officially introduce Chloe and the child into the family lineage. Turning her head, she caught Julian watching her with a smug, triumphant smirk. Elena marched directly to Victoria, demanding to know if her mother-in-law was truly prepared to parade their private scandals before the public just because Elena had blocked her from plundering the conglomerate's subsidiary funds. Victoria didn't flinch. Instead, she cruelly pivoted the conversation to Elena's deceased son. For years, the family had hidden the tragedy from the public, falsely claiming the boy was studying abroad. Victoria coldly stated that it was the perfect time to replace him, demanding that Elena legally accept the illegitimate child as her own so he could be recognized by their ancestors. Helpless against the pressure of the moment, Elena had no choice but to sit before the flashing cameras, her face a mask of quiet sorrow. The true breaking point came later that afternoon. Elena discovered that Victoria had already moved the boy into her late son's bedroom, ordering the estate staff to throw away every single one of her child's belongings. Consumed by a blinding mix of grief and rage, Elena bolted from the house, threw herself into a sports car, and tore down the mountain roads at breakneck speed. As she tore through the gates, she nearly caused a catastrophic accident. Suddenly, Leo materialized at the driver's side door. Without a word of warning, he slipped into the passenger seat. Elena screamed at him to get out, but he remained completely unfazed, stating calmly that his only duty was to protect her. When she snapped that she wanted to be completely alone, Leo quietly replied that she could simply pretend he wasn't there. Realizing his stubbornness matched her own, Elena relented, the boundaries between a cold employer and a loyal protector beginning to blur. In truth, nothing improper had happened between them, but the intense emotional vulnerability of the previous evening, and the fact that Leo had strictly maintained his professional distance despite her advances, left Elena feeling deeply exposed. Seeking to reestablish control, she informed him of her intention to fire him. It was then that Leo finally confessed his hidden agenda. He revealed that his closest friend had been brutally murdered a few months prior, executed by the exact same elite assassin who had targeted Elena at the luxury boutique. The failed plaza shooting meant the contract was still active, and the killer would inevitably strike again. Leo confessed that he was using his position as her shadow to draw the assassin out and claim his revenge, pleading with her to stay by his side. Shortly after, as they stood by a quiet overlook, Leo noticed sand brushing against Elena's bare feet. He knelt on the ground, carefully using his own handkerchief to wipe them clean. The intimate gesture crossed an unspoken boundary. Catching herself, Elena composed her expression and firmly reminded Leo to never forget his place as a hired bodyguard. Refusing to return to the oppressive main estate, Elena directed Leo to drive to a secluded family villa in the mountains. However, the moment the car pulled up, she realized they weren't alone. Julian was waiting inside. Having tracked her, Julian had witnessed the intimate dynamic between Elena and her protector from the window. The moment Elena walked through the door, Julian desperately tried to pivot, falsely professing his love and demanding they try for another child. Elena rejected him with ice-cold disdain, calling his sudden affection a pathetic, self-inflicted humiliation. Infuriated, Julian lunged forward to force himself on her. Leo broke all protocol. Stepping directly between them, he physically restrained the powerful corporate vice president. A bodyguard laying hands on the heir to the conglomerate was an unforgivable offense that could cost Leo his life. Sensing the danger, Elena quickly intervened, coldly stating she was leaving the premises. Her swift exit prevented Julian from ordering his guards to tear Leo apart, but the incident left Julian utterly consumed by an intense, toxic jealousy. Collision. This corporate war is spinning completely out of control. Elena is playing a dangerous game, and Victoria is willing to destroy anyone who stands in her way. If you are hooked on this battle for the Empire, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Drop a comment below. Do you think Leo will catch his friend's killer before Julian finds a way to ruin him? Let us know your theories. With no options left, Elena returned to the main mansion. After a sleepless night of calculated reflection, she decided to strike back with a devastating counteroffensive, quietly orchestrating a massive leak to the press detailing the vice president's hidden decade-long affair and secret son. The following morning, unaware of the gathering storm, Victoria held a mandatory martial arts sparring session on the estate grounds. Victoria was renowned within elite circles for her master-level judo skills, historically flattening every young guard who dared to face her. But when she squared off against Leo, she met her match. For the first time in her life, she was decisively thrown to the mat. Rather than turning furious, the eccentric chairwoman was deeply amused by his strength. Dismissing her assistants, she cornered Leo, lingering close enough to note the distinct fragrance on his sleeve, and commanded him to become her regular training partner. Her playful mood instantly evaporated when her eyes fell on a newly developed security photo. It captured Elena and Leo wearing matching, coordinated outfits on the day of the rescue. Before Victoria could weaponize this discovery against her daughter-in-law, her chief assistant burst into the room in a panic. The press leak had exploded across every major news network. The identity of Julian's illegitimate child was trending nationwide, and a horde of aggressive reporters had already swarmed the outer gates of the estate. Caught in the crosshairs, a terrified Julian turned his vehicle around and fled the scene entirely. Predictably, a hysterical Chloe ran straight to Elena's quarters, demanding that Elena handle the fallout. Chloe arrogantly insisted that Elena hold an emergency press conference to publicly declare that Chloe was not a homewrecker. Elena listened with absolute indifference. Moments later, Victoria summoned them both. Chloe barged into the room first, carelessly taking a seat until Victoria savagely ordered her out. The family's lead counsel advised total media silence, assuring them that public memory would fade. But Elena had no intention of letting them bury the truth. Victoria had tried to force her to play the mother to Julian's mistake, and Elena was about to flip the script. The moment she stepped out of the office, she ordered her personal assistant to schedule a live press conference for the very next morning. Unbeknownst to Elena, her assistant was secretly feeding information back to Victoria. To sabotage the event, Victoria dragged Elena to a mandatory high society gala the next morning, keeping her trapped among wealthy elites while the press corps gathered elsewhere. But Leo had already anticipated the trap. While Victoria was distracted, Leo orchestrated a swift exit through the ballroom restroom, successfully driving Elena straight to the media auditorium. Back at the gala, Victor learned of the escape and turned on a television monitor just as Elena stepped up to the microphone. The room erupted with accusatory questions, with journalists openly doubting Elena's composure. Calmly, Elena looked into the cameras and denied the rumors that Julian had a secret child. As the reporters began to jeer, she dropped the ultimate bombshell. The 10-year-old boy was not the vice president's son at all. He was the biological child of the late former chairman, Julian's deceased father. Watching the broadcast, Victoria shook with pure rage, while Julian felt a twisted sense of relief. The true casualty of the play was Chloe. Despite her cunning ambitions, she suddenly realized she had been utterly checkmated. She hadn't been the glamorous mistress of a young corporate heir, but the hidden plaything of a 70-year-old man, and Victoria had knowingly set her up to experience the exact same humiliation Elena had endured for a decade. When they returned to the estate, Elena ruthlessly took command. She cornered a weeping Chloe, strictly confining her to a single, isolated wing of the mansion and explicitly banning her from ever joining the central family meals. Though she had achieved a flawless public victory, Elena was privately breaking down. During a late-night jog around the grounds, with Leo trailing closely behind, she finally opened up to him. She confessed that her refusal to grant Julian a divorce had nothing to do with wealth or corporate greed. On his deathbed, the former chairman had forced Elena to place her fingerprint on an encrypted digital tablet, begging her to hold onto her title at all costs until the right moment arrived to unlock his final directives. Out of absolute loyalty to the dead patriarch, she was trapped in a loveless war. But Victoria's cruelty knew no bounds. Hoping to shatter Elena's resolve once and for all, the chairwoman summoned her and revealed a horrific secret. Elena's estranged mother had been forcibly committed to a heavily fortified, highly unstable psychiatric facility in the mountains. The operation had been carried out by Elena's own greedy, untrustworthy brother, Thomas, acting entirely under Victoria's payroll. The revelation triggered a flood of painful memories for Elena. Years ago, despite their absolute poverty, her mother had ruthlessly forced Elena to pursue professional golf, taking out predatory, high-interest loans to fund her training in the United States. Though Elena went on to achieve global stardom, earning over $10 billion across a decade, her mother had squandered every single cent on gambling debts. After using her hard-won prize money to clear the final loans, Elena had completely severed ties with her family, vowing to donate all her future wealth to global charities. It was during that vulnerable period that Julian, struggling to recover from a high-profile scandal involving a former girlfriend who had died of a sudden drug overdose, had fled to Africa to court Elena. The conglomerate had desperately used her saintly angel of charity reputation to salvage their tanking stock prices. To ensure no dirty laundry ever tainted their new public image, Victoria had secretly paid Thomas to lock the gambling mother away in total isolation. Now, with the elderly woman on the brink of death, Victoria had intentionally revealed the location just to torture her daughter-in-law. Guided by Thomas, Elena raced up the mountain to the clinical facility, passing through heavy security details, only to find that she was too late. Her mother was already dead. As Elena wept over the body, Victoria's final trap snapped shut. The chairwoman had intentionally scheduled a monumental, mandatory corporate merger meeting for the very next morning. Victoria sent a cold, unambiguous message to the grieving philanthropist. If Elena dared to skip the signing to attend her mother's funeral, the deal would collapse, and Victoria would ensure that Elena quietly disappeared from the face of the earth. Faced with the terrifying threat of being permanently silenced in the same horrific manner as her mother, Elena had no choice but to temporarily capitulate. While her untrustworthy brother, Thomas, handled their mother's hasty cremation alone, Elena was forced to sit in a glittering luxury hotel ballroom. She played the part of the perfect, dutiful daughter-in-law for a high-stakes dinner with Victoria, her brother-in-law Christian, and Christian's powerful father-in-law Arthur. But Elena was a woman built to survive adversity, not to be broken by it. That very afternoon, she secretly slipped away to Leo's private quarters, desperately requesting that he take her to the quiet site where her mother's ashes were to be laid to rest. Driven by his deep, protective affection for her, Leo completely ignored the strict prohibitions of the conglomerate. He ripped the GPS tracking device out of the vehicle and switched off his mobile phone. The moment their car cleared the perimeter, the elite estate erupted into absolute chaos as security teams scrambled to hunt them down. At her childhood home, surrounded by memories of a simpler past, the emotional weight became too much for Elena to bear. Seizing the raw vulnerability of the moment, Leo pulled her into a comforting embrace. Unbeknownst to them, a hidden operative captured the intimate moment on camera, instantly forwarding the photographic evidence directly to Victoria. Although they returned to the mountain villa before nightfall, the trap was already waiting. The gate guards coldly informed Leo that the vice president demanded his immediate presence. Knowing he had crossed an unforgivable line, Leo walked into the study alongside Elena. Without warning, an enraged Julian viciously assaulted Leo, demanding that Marcus terminate the bodyguard's employment immediately. Julian's fury only intensified when Elena stood there, completely unresponsive to his outbursts. In a surprising turn, Victoria remained entirely silent throughout the altercation. She led Marcus into her private office and delivered a highly calculated order: do whatever Elena wanted. The ruthless matriarch was playing a much deeper game. She intentionally wanted to push Elena and Leo past their limits, orchestrating a scandal so deeply humiliating that Elena could be legally stripped of her assets and exiled from the family forever. Unable to reveal this twisted strategy to her hot-headed son, Victoria fabricated an excuse to Julian, mocking him for lacking the confidence to keep his own wife away from a mere bodyguard. She then commanded Marcus to formally apologize to Leo on behalf of the family. But Victoria had underestimated her daughter-in-law. Elena held the keys to the conglomerate's most lucrative subsidiary, and she was far from helpless. The very next day, with just 2 calculated phone calls, Elena finalized and pushed through a massive, independent cosmetics advertising campaign. The moment the commercial flooded the airwaves, it completely hijacked the market. This move was a direct strike against Victoria, Christian, and Arthur, who had spent months preparing their own rival product launch for the exact same week. Elena's surprise campaign completely derailed their rollout, instantly costing Arthur's firm hundreds of billions of won. Chart increasing the corporate warfare is reaching a boiling point. An infuriated Julian rushed into the estate just as Christian and his wife cornered Elena, demanding to know why she had sabotaged their business interests. When Christian aggressively addressed Elena as an equal, Julian unexpectedly stepped forward, fiercely defending his wife against his brother's insults. Despite his toxic private life, Julian refused to show weakness in front of the family rivals. His fierce defense of Elena completely unhinged Chloe, who snapped and exposed the family's darkest skeletons right there in the hallway. She fiercely revealed that she had originally been promised to Julian, but his devastating drug scandal had forced her into a backup marriage with Christian just to secure the corporate alliance. Then came the ultimate blow: Chloe screamed that Christian was never a legitimate heir at all, but rather the secret, illegitimate product of Victoria's decades-long affair with their lead counsel lawyer Vance. Julian coldly admitted he had known about his mother's infidelity for years. Watching her sons nearly come to blows over Elena's corporate sabotage drove Victoria into a state of absolute, quiet madness. The following afternoon, immediately after Elena concluded a high-profile public charity appearance, a swarm of surveillance drones suddenly descended upon her transport vehicle. As the drones locked onto their target, a deer darted across the asphalt, causing the driver to swerve in a panic. Sensing immediate danger, a dissatisfied Leo forced the driver to swap seats with him. Using his elite tactical instincts, Leo pushed the vehicle to its absolute limits, performing high-speed evasive maneuvers that managed to dodge half the incoming gunfire, eventually using the underpass of a concrete bridge to smash 2 of the trailing drones. However, the aerial threat was a distraction. Before Leo could scan the surrounding terrain, a secondary explosive device detonated violently from beneath the chassis. Sharon, the ruthless female assassin who doubled as Victoria's personal shadow, stepped out from the treeline. She approached the smoking wreckage to ensure Elena's demise, leaving calmly only after confirming that everyone inside was completely unconscious. Against all odds, a severely injured Leo dragged himself back to consciousness. Ignoring his own bleeding wounds, he shattered the rear glass and pulled Elena from the burning vehicle. In the microsecond before the fuel tank exploded, Leo threw his body over hers, taking the brunt of the flying shrapnel directly into his back before blacking out on top of her. At the hospital, doctors confirmed the metal fragments had miraculously missed Leo's vital organs, but he was rushed directly into the intensive care unit. Watching from the upper corridor, Sharon began formulating a fallback plan. Slinking into the ICU the moment the medical staff stepped away, she drew a weapon to finish him off. Suddenly, Julian walked into the room. His complex, deeply conflicted gaze fixed entirely on the unconscious bodyguard who had now saved his wife's life twice. Utterly uncomfortable with the unspoken bond forming between Leo and Elena, Julian lingered in silence before turning and exiting without uttering a word. Sharon moved to strike again, but caught sight of a security camera mounted directly above Leo's bed. With no clean way to execute the hit, she was forced to retreat. Meanwhile, the local police chief was summoned to the mountain estate under absolute secrecy. He was received by lawyer Vance, Victoria's longtime lover. Contrary to the celebration Vance expected over Elena's near-fatal accident, Victoria was in a towering rage. Someone had authorized a public assassination attempt without her explicit clearance, overstepping her absolute authority. She savagely ordered the police chief to hunt down the operative responsible, demanding nothing less than a death sentence. Exiting the mansion, Vance pulled the police chief aside, deliberately twisting Victoria's directives to protect their own operations. He subtly implied that the chairwoman desired a convenient scapegoat, suggesting they frame an international extremist organization that had previously sent threats to Elena's foundation. Though conventional investigations were tightly compromised, Leo refused to sit idle. The moment he regained consciousness, he slipped out of the hospital to meet an old contact within the department, quietly requesting the raw, unedited surveillance feeds from the plaza and the highway. Julian was launching his own parallel shadow investigation, deploying 50 corporate security assets to review regional traffic cameras overnight. A brute force approach bound to yield faster results than Leo's solo efforts. Before either man could unmask the architect of the bombing, Elena unexpectedly materialized at Leo's private quarters. Leo immediately questioned her safety, pointing out the active security cameras monitoring the dormitory perimeter. Elena calmly dismissed his worries, revealing that only the head butler possessed access to those specific archives, and he was currently off-property. This was their first private meeting since surviving the explosion, and the shared trauma had drawn them undeniably closer. Elena revealed her growing suspicion that Victoria was using the charity's offshore subsidiary to launder untraceable corporate funds. She directly asked Leo to infiltrate Vance's private residence and retrieve the secret financial ledgers. The next day, Leo used the security grid to confirm that Vance had left his estate. Lacking the entry passcode, Leo returned to the mansion's kitchen. Lifting Vance's clean fingerprints from a crystal glass the lawyer had used earlier that morning. Utilizing a specialized precision carving machine hidden in his quarters, Leo fabricated a synthetic glove replicating the prints, successfully bypassing the biometric lock on Vance's front door. Inside, he discovered the safe required both the fingerprint and a rotating digital code. Working quickly, Leo unstrapped his watch and planted a microscopic pinhole camera directly opposite the keypad to record the next opening. What Leo failed to realize was that Sharon was monitoring his entire intrusion via a secondary hidden feed, alerting Vance instantly. Though Vance raced back to the property, Leo had already vanished into the night. Vance checked the safe, breathing a massive sigh of relief upon finding the physical assets untouched. But as his eyes drifted to his liquor cabinet, his severe, pathological obsession with symmetry and order triggered an immediate alarm. The bottles were fractionally misaligned. The master ledger detailing the tycoon family's off-the-books corporations was gone. Simultaneously, the moment Leo presented the stolen ledger to Elena at her office, a tactical squad from the state prosecutor's office smashed through the doors, brandishing a pre-signed federal search warrant. The entire scenario had been a meticulously orchestrated trap. The main corporate accounts were entirely pristine, but by handling the illicit ledger, Elena and Leo had walked directly into a trap. With these document records seized on Elena's immediate premises, Her wing of the family would take the absolute fall for the entire laundering scheme. Within the hour, Vance initiated the final phase of the character assassination. He presented Victoria with fabricated, highly suggestive surveillance logs implying a deep, illicit romance between Elena and her protector. Vance then let Victoria deliver the crushing psychological blow to her daughter-in-law. Facing Elena, Victoria softly claimed that as a woman, she didn't care about the alleged marital betrayal, but pointed out the sheer audacity of letting a hired hand steal state-level corporate documents. Victoria smoothly argued that Leo was clearly a highly trained, master manipulator who was using Elena as an unwitting pawn to extort the conglomerate. When Elena desperately tried to defend him, noting Leo hadn't even had the physical time to leverage the papers, Vance skillfully sowed seeds of doubt, reminding Elena that their acquaintance was dangerously short. Victoria driving the point home by highlighting Leo's flawless, top-tier graduation honors from the elite police academy, proving he was far too intelligent to be a simple, loyal guard. She claimed Leo was intentionally leaving Elena's brother under federal investigation while keeping Elena close purely because she still possessed immense corporate value to exploit. Stung by the calculated doubt, Elena stood up, coldly declaring she would personally retrieve the missing ledgers for Vance. The moment she vacated the room, Vance moved to ensure the distraction remained permanent. He immediately met with Chloe, weaponizing her desperate, greedy ambition to supplant Elena as the primary daughter-in-law. Following Vance's quiet instructions, Chloe leaked the news of the impending federal raid on Elena's brother directly to the mainstream media. By the following morning, devastating headlines regarding the family's charitable corruption blanketed every major network, causing the conglomerate stock prices to go into a catastrophic freefall. The corporate inner circle immediately called an emergency board meeting to resolve the exploding PR disaster. Lacking strategic vision, the minor stakeholders sat in paralyzed silence, forcing them to rely entirely on lawyer Vance. He proposed a ruthless diversion. Manufacture a high-society romantic scandal to shift the media's focus away from Thomas's financial fraud by orchestrating an intimate narrative involving Elena and her personal protector, Leo. Shortly after, Vance escorted Elena to Victoria's private quarters to lay the trap. He informed Elena that she needed to travel to a coastal estate in Busan to shoot public solidarity photographs with Julian, claiming it would stabilize the conglomerate's free-falling stock. Vance noted that Julian would arrive late, instructing Elena to travel ahead accompanied only by Leo. Though Elena sensed a trap, she remained unbothered. During her secret investigation the previous evening, she had uncovered a massive financial anomaly. All off-the-books slush funds had already been consolidated into Victoria's personal accounts. This meant her brother Thomas could never be used as the ultimate legal scapegoat. Choosing to play along, she maintained her silence. The following day, Elena and Leo drove down to the coastal villa. Passing a scenic overlook near a lighthouse, Leo noticed the tension in her shoulders and pulled over. As they stepped out, a sudden coastal gale caught Elena's silk scarf. Leo caught the fabric and gently wrapped it back around her neck, drawing their guarded hearts closer. Unbeknownst to them, Sharon, acting as a mercenary asset for Vance, was capturing every detail with a telephoto lens for blackmail material. Late that evening, Sharon slipped into the darkened coastal villa. Though Leo maintained tactical vigilance, the local security detail had mysteriously vanished. By the time Leo detected a silhouette inside the main corridor, Sharon had already breached the master suite. Facing the assassin, Elena reacted with flawless survival instincts, weaponizing a heavy pillow to deflect a lethal blade strike and buying Leo critical seconds to enter the room. Utilizing his agility, Leo initially gained the upper hand, but Sharon drew a concealed tactical weapon, inflicting a severe laceration across his torso. Adhering to Vance's strategy, where Elena needed to die while Leo was framed as the unhinged perpetrator, Sharon broke off the engagement to pursue the fleeing philanthropist. Bleeding heavily, Leo dragged himself after them. The pursuit culminated at a dark, isolated yacht slip. Elena scrambled into the lower decks, but was quickly cornered in a tight cabin as Sharon stalked her from an upper walkway. Just as Elena collapsed from psychological exhaustion, a dying Leo breached the cabin. Abandoning all defensive caution, he launched a ferocious counterattack, pinning Sharon against the bulkhead. Gathering his last reserves of adrenaline, Leo delivered a crushing side kick, launching Sharon over the railing and into the freezing sea. With the threat neutralized, Leo was entirely spent. Lacking the physical strength to carry the unconscious Elena back to the mainland, he unmoored the luxury yacht and engaged the automated steering, sending the vessel drifting into open waters for rescue teams to locate before he collapsed over the cockpit controls. By the following morning, the engineered media blast dominated every major tabloid. Rather than confronting his wife, a furious Julian stormed directly into Victoria's office. He demanded to know why his own mother had deployed corporate espionage assets to humiliate the family name. Victoria coldly attempted to weaponize her maternal authority, but Julian fiercely cut her off, declaring he would never grant Elena a divorce. Julian then revealed the deep-seated trauma of his youth. As a child, he had repeatedly witnessed Victoria engaging in a shameless affair with lawyer Vance. It wasn't until he met Elena during a humanitarian mission that his world changed. She had accepted him for who he was, not his family's empire. Though their marriage had fractured after a devastating medical tragedy cost them their unborn child, Julian had stayed by her side in silent penance, even secretly funding the medical care for Elena's late mother. Leaving the office, Julian immediately sought out his second target, lawyer Vance. Julian ruthlessly exposed Vance's two most protected secrets, The assassination. Julian's father, the late chairman, had never suffered a natural heart attack. Vance had systematically orchestrated the patriarch's assassination. The usurper. Vance's entire corporate crusade was designed to position his own biological son, Christian, to usurp the conglomerate. Julian coldly reminded Vance that Victoria fundamentally viewed him as nothing more than a glorified servant. Julian then descended into the mansion's private wine cellar, where a recovered but severely bound Leo was being held. Julian drew a firearm and pressed it against Leo's temple, demanding to know the nature of his bond with Elena. Scanning Leo's unflinching expression, Julian's paranoia subsided, recognizing they had never crossed a physical line. Suddenly, Elena breached the cellar doors, throwing her body directly in front of Leo to shield him. She openly confessed to her husband that she had developed profound, unreciprocated feelings for her protector, but stated that Leo had never broken his professional vows. She looked Julian in the eye and added that despite their toxicity, she knew he would never wish her dead. This tiny shred of remaining trust caused Julian's armor to crumble, and the broken power couple shared a brief, sorrowful embrace. There were less than 48 hours remaining before the formal reading of the late chairman's unalterable will. On the morning of the reading, the high-stakes players assembled in the primary boardroom. In a display of psychological warfare, the foreign executor began reading the sweeping legal document entirely in complex English. The moment the lawyer transitioned into the core text, a catastrophic shockwave ripped through the room. The late chairman had hidden a gargantuan fortune totaling 18 trillion won, and the sole, absolute beneficiary was the global charity foundation entirely controlled by Elena. Simultaneously, an unencrypted master ledger detailing Victoria's entire history of domestic embezzlement was broadcast directly to the federal authorities in attendance. Realizing the empire was collapsing, a panicked Vance covertly ordered Sharon to execute Thomas to permanently sever the laundering trail. Leo, however, was already steps ahead. Having captured Vance's frantic assassination order on remote surveillance, Leo intercepted Sharon in the estate's outer gardens. Though wounded, Leo utilized a specialized tactical stun device to overpower her defenses, neutralizing her for federal custody. As federal agents led a screaming Victoria out of the main gates, Vance stood on the perimeter, barely able to contain his internal euphoria. But before he could celebrate, he witnessed the police loading a captured Sharon into a transport vehicle. Terrified she would trade his name for a plea deal, Vance raced into the courtyard, frantically unearthing a sealed titanium case buried beneath the soil. Inside lay a solid gold bullion bar, the physical instrument Christian had used to fracture the late chairman's skull, still covered in Christian's definitive fingerprints. Vance marched directly into the federal holding facility to confront Victoria, sliding the gold bullion across the steel table. He shamelessly delivered a chilling choice. If Victoria did not immediately sign a formal confession taking sole responsibility for the financial crimes, he would hand the parricide evidence directly to the state prosecutor. To save Christian from a lifetime sentence, the proud matriarch collapsed in tears and signed the full federal confession. Simultaneously, back at the main estate, Julian marched Chloe into a concealed vault room, revealing an astronomical cache of gold bullion and bonds totaling 100 billion won. Julian explained that this fortune was hers to keep under a single condition. She must take his young son and vanish from the country, ensuring the boy was raised safe from the toxic fallout of the conglomerate. Across the compound, Christian was trapped in a furious escalation. Chloe had slapped comprehensive divorce papers onto his desk. With Victoria permanently incarcerated, Christian had outlived his corporate utility. Driven into an acute psychotic break, Christian raced down to the villa's subterranean armory, retrieving a high-powered tactical rifle. Elena was crossing the central foyer to leave the estate permanently when Julian descended the main staircase. Suddenly, Christian materialized from the shadows behind his brother, leveling the rifle. Elena spun around just as a deafening gunshot echoed through the concrete hall. Vance breached the main doors a second later, desperately commanding his son to hand over the firearm, but Christian's mind was entirely gone. Sensing the danger, Julian shifted his weight to completely shield Elena's line of sight. Before anyone could displace the angle, a second deafening blast shattered the room. The high-velocity round tore directly through Julian's left chest cavity. Through sheer force of will, Julian maintained his footing for a final moment. Elena screamed his name, throwing herself into his arms as he collapsed onto the marble floor. Hearing her address him with the raw affection of their early years, a serene smile crossed Julian's lips. He whispered a final, breathless apology into her shoulder before his eyes went completely vacant. Witnessing the fatal outcome, Vance coldly commanded a shaking Christian to purge the digital security mainframes before fleeing the property into the night. What is the cost of an empire built on blood, betrayal, and broken vows? Julian paid the ultimate price to protect the only truth he ever believed in, leaving Elena to inherit a staggering fortune forged in the fires of a ruined dynasty. But as the ashes settle and the final confessions are signed, the true battle for survival is only just beginning. If your heart is still racing after that devastating final sacrifice, don't let the story end here. Subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss a single second as we uncover the thrilling fallout, the dark secrets still lurking in the shadows, and the epic quest for ultimate retribution. Drop a comment below. Did Julian's final act redeem his past, or was he just another casualty of the empire? Stand with us in the wreckage. Subscribe now and brace yourself for what comes next.